Okay, we've used an image editing program to create our image with transparent backgrounds and with the edges as close as we can get to the actual image itself. And we've added it to the content of our game. The last thing to do is to actually get it into your game and put it on the screen. So to do that, we need a texture file or texture variable. And these are two-dimensional. And I'm going to call it saucer. And I'm going to put texture on the end because I may have several things related to saucer here, and this will help me keep them straight. And I'm going to have a rectangle, and I'm going to call that saucer rectangle. And that's going to be used to position the image on the screen. Whatever size and position I have for the rectangle is the size and position that my image will take up. So those are the two variables that I need. Now, this is content. This file over here is content. And what I need to do is I need to load the content into my program. So I called it saucer texture, and I have to load that image into it. So equals content.load, and then in angle brackets, this is kind of awkward. You just have to get used to it. And I give the type, which is texture 2D, and then in parentheses, I give the name of the file, which is saucer, and you do not put the file extension on the end. If you do put the file extension on the end, it does not work. So that's all you need. That will load it. Loading it doesn't do any good unless you draw it. So let's go down here, and if you want to draw something, you have to put all of your draw commands inside of the following two commands. SpriteBatch.begin. The parentheses are required. That's actually calling a function. And then SpriteBatch.end. And again, that's another function. In between, you do SpriteBatch.draw for every item that you want to draw. And if you take a look here, there are 8 different draw methods that we can use. And I can use the arrow keys here to cycle through them. Some of them require quite a few arguments in order to draw the image that you want. We're going to start off with the simplest one here, where we just specify a texture, which is the saucer texture, a rectangle, which is a saucer rectangle, and then a color. Okay, so saucer texture is the first thing, and then as I go through this, you see this is now bold, so it's telling me in order what my arguments are supposed to be. And I want a saucer rectangle, comma, and now color gets bold down here in my little tooltip. And for color, most of the time we're going to do white, color.white. You can actually tint these if you want to. If you use white, the image is displayed exactly as the original colors. If you choose a color other than white, then it mixes that color with the colors in your picture, and it'll look a little bit different. But most of the time here, we're just going to use white. Okay. Now I'm going to run this program, and it's not going to work. Let's go ahead and run it. And I want my saucer to appear on the screen, and I'm going to get nothing but a cornflower blue background. Okay. So why is that happening? Well, the reason that's happening is because, let's go in here, and this is where it's supposed to be drawing. So there must be something wrong with this instruction here. So I'm going to go and stop the program when it gets there. So if I go to the far left here, this gray column, and click on it, I'll get a little red dot, and that means that there's a breakpoint, which means it will stop when it gets to that point in the program. Debugging game programs like this is a little bit difficult in some ways because this gets executed 60 times a second. And, you know, if you put a stop inside of it, then it's going to stop 60 times before you even get 1 second's worth of work done in the program. But it can also be very useful. Let's go ahead and run the program. And when it stops, that line will turn yellow. So it has stopped. We get a little yellow arrow over here too, indicating that it's stopped. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause the mouse over these, and it tells me that it is using the file called saucer, and then it tells me the rectangle, and here's the problem. The coordinates, the value for a rectangle is the first one is the x-coordinate, and then the y-coordinate, which is the coordinates of the upper left corner of the rectangle, and then I've got the width, and I've got the height. Okay, and if I have a rectangle with a height of 0 and a width of 0, it has nothing. It's not going to show up on the screen at all. So my problem here, we need to stop, and we need to go back. I can turn the breakpoint off now because I know exactly what was wrong. Up in Initialize, I'm going to initialize my rectangle, and there's a couple of ways to do this. Saucer rectangle. Yeah, let's try that again. Dot x equals, I'm going to put it 0 in the upper left hand corner. Saucer rectangle dot y equals 0. That's okay. Top left corner for x and y. And then the width and the height. So saucer rectangle dot width equals 120. This is pixels. And the saucer rectangle dot height is going to be equal to 40 pixels. Okay. So now I should draw my saucer in the upper left hand corner of my screen. Let's go ahead and run it. And this time we should actually be able to see something. And there is no rectangle around it because we made that transparent. If we hadn't done that, we'd see a purple rectangle around it, and it would look really odd. So we're getting it on the screen. Let's try a couple of other things while we're at it. Let's try to put this in the middle of the screen. The default dimensions for my screen are 800 wide. And so I'm going to do 400 to get to the middle, and the height is 480. Half of that would be 240. So this should put it in the middle of the screen, and it doesn't quite put it in the middle of the screen, and we'll see why. So and my cursor goes away here, but if you look at this, the upper left-hand corner of the rectangle is where the 400 and 240 is. And so that actually is the center of the screen, but the center of the screen becomes the upper left-hand corner of my image. So what I want to do is I want to back up to the left half of the width of my rectangle. So half of that would be 60, so I'm going to do minus 60 here. And I also want to move up. We start in the upper left-hand corner for 0, 0 and go across to 800 and down to 240. Actually across to 799 and down to 479. So I want to subtract 20 from this. So that will back off on to the left and up just enough to make that flying saucer look like it is precisely in the center of my screen. And there it is. And if you could get out some ruler and start measuring, you would see that it's precisely in the middle of the screen. So that's how you get something on the screen. All you need is a rectangle. If you make the rectangle bigger or smaller, you can resize the image on the screen. And what we're going to look at next in the next video is how you can move these around on the screen. So let's go ahead and stop there, and we'll look at moving things on the next video.